Hey guys, Moist Critical here. Today we're going to be talking about the greatest M4 AG of all time. This M4 is Killer Bean's special weapon over here. It's a Belle Delphine blaster. It's a OnlyFans attractor. I love this gun over here. Please like, comment, and subscribe, guys. It really helps me out. Hey everybody, today we're here to talk about setting up your rifle for CQB at Siege. This applies to outdoor play as well. Generally for airsoft, you're not really engaging anybody beyond, I don't know, 200 feet or something like that. So most of these tips and tricks can apply to any rifle, any primary weapon that you guys are starting out with. This video is for anybody starting out with a new gun, or it's for people that are looking to maybe improve their setup. Of course, I'm still learning, so my setup's always changing depending on new stuff that comes out, new techniques, and kind of new knowledge that gets developed every so often. The biggest things we're going to go over today are attachments. We're going to go over what's most important to least. That way you guys can spend on things that actually make a difference on the field, and you guys can save money. And then if you want to put stuff on it, like what I like to call them is LARPy things, or things that are kind of to trick out or swag out your gun. Not that you can't put those on. It's totally your gun and your money, and you can do whatever you want with it. You know, chain tags, crazy camos, fake pec boxes, whatever kind of LARPy stuff you want to put on in the future. That I would probably save at the end of your budget, and I would probably prioritize what to get and then all the fun stuff after. So we're gonna start off at the front of the gun because there is a really important thing on the front here, and that is gonna be your light. At Siege and a lot of fields, there's gonna be mixed lighting environments. So you're gonna have areas that are dark and areas that are bright. And the rule of most airsoft fields is you can't shoot what you can't see. And if it's dark, you generally cannot see it in there, and you cannot shoot because you don't know where your targets are. You can't ID things properly. So the first attachment I would recommend you guys get is a good flashlight. Weapon mounted light, don't buy a mag light and tape it on your gun. It's not really that efficient. And you definitely want to consider the comfort of shooting and how you hold your gun when choosing a light. So first off is, where do you mount it? So when you're choosing a light, you want to make sure to mount it as close to the front of the gun as possible. So my muzzle device is over here and my light is over here. I could mount it a bit further, but I kind of like it here because I feel like it's the most ergonomic spot for me. And the reason why you don't mount your light back here, or some people mount it like directly beside their sight, is because you have this big mass in front of you, your rail or your handguard, and that will block off a lot of the output from this light. So if I were to put my light here, and I were to turn it on with this pressure switch on top, you would get a huge shadow from either a suppressor or your rail if you don't mount it far forward enough. So first thing is to mount it far forward enough and make sure you have the appropriate mounting solutions for whatever kind of rail you're using. In terms of what kind of lights I personally like Scout style lights. So this is an Arisaka 600 series light with a E2 XT head. It's kind of more of a throwy outdoor light. I like them because they mount on most rifles. They're very slim. So if I were to go ambidextrous, like with my left hand, if I were to switch hands, I can grip around it pretty easily. And of course, as a righty, it's super easy to grab. A consideration to have for lights is to make sure that you can operate them ambidextrously. So I have a switch on the top, and that's where I recommend putting the switch, because for most modern shooting stances, you want to be holding your gun kind of like this. I like to call it kind of giving your gun a handshake. So if I'm giving this gun over here a handshake, just ignore the base plate. So if I'm holding my gun like this, I'm able to reach my switch, no issue, and I can activate my light. And if I switch hands over here, I can use this hand also to activate my light and reach around that. I have some examples of guns behind me. And as you can see, all of them have their lights mounted pretty close to the front. This one has a pec box and the light's on the little pec over here. And this one also has the light mounted far forward. And all of these have pressure switches here, or they have buttons on the light that can be activated really easily offhand and on hand. So for those of you who do not really like these Scout style lights or having something stick out, I understand that this can be a bit asymmetric, and it does take a bit more practice to get used to using this ambidextrously. Additionally, it does have another point of failure, which is the pressure pad. I'm lucky enough to have a real steel one, but it is a really common point for Scout style lights that you can get to fail because of the wiring here, a bad connection. So what I actually recommend for a lot of newer players is just skipping this style of light altogether and going with one of these. So this is a pistol light. This normally would go underneath a pistol, so on the rail on the bottom. However, it is also really great for rifles, and this is why. This is a Crytek LVOA. It's one of our giveaway guns for our frag pack giveaway, so you can check out our social media for more details on that. And this is a little pistol style light in front. So the great thing about this is it mounts really easily. You don't need to buy like any separate mounts for it. It's kind of an all-in-one unit. And what is awesome about it is that it's fully ambidextrous because it has these two switches over here. and it can sit pretty far up. So if I were to use this light like this, you can easily just press this switch over here if you're using it with your left hand, and you can just activate it like this if you're using it with your right. Really popular setup. It's nice and in line, really slim, really low profile, and highly recommended for a light setup. So the next major attachment I would probably recommend is going to be some sort of optic system. Now, some people argue against this and they say you can use a light to trace your BBs and shoot, and that's very true, and it does help a lot with zeroing, as you can see from our previous zeroing video. However, I don't like to rely on that because it kind of forces you to use your light to shoot, and there's not, you don't want to do that in every situation, such as if you were hiding, you don't want to give away your position, and it's kind of a bad habit because while you can trace your BBs, you do lose sight of that trace over distance, and your height over boards and stuff change and all that crazy stuff. I do recommend a red dot over a magnified optic because most airsoft engagement distances, like I said, are not very far, and the red dot helps you aim by having both of your eyes open so you have more peripheral vision. It also is great because it works in low light environments with no problems. I do use night vision, and the red dot is pretty essential for that. So in terms of where to mount your red dot, I typically like it as far forward on the main, so this is an M4 of course, I typically like it as far forward on the M4 receiver as I can. I don't like putting it on my rail because this can shift. Not specifically this rail, but some rails can shift. I prefer having it on the receiver because this thing doesn't really move. And if you want to change the rail down the line, you don't have to worry about finding different mounting solutions and stuff like that. This is on a really high mount. It's on a Dytac Knights Armament high-rise mount. And the reason for this is because I often like shooting with one of these guys. This is really fun to play with. We'll have a video coming out on gas mask and face protection and stuff pretty soon. And it really helps me get a nice cheek weld, and it allows me to maintain an upright position when I'm shooting, so that way I'm not like turtling into my gun, and being upright allows me to move more. And because we're at Siege and it's a CQB field, you need to move a lot. So moving and shooting, really important. More comfortable moving and shooting, even better. Now, one thing I didn't go over for the lights and for the optic is going to be your protection, and protection is always very important, and you should take that lesson in life with you no matter where you go. Protection involves putting some sort of Lexan or polycarbonate lens in front of the optic and in front of your light. Yeah, you can buy a certain brand of optic and you can have a lifetime warranty, and you can go justify that warranty all you want, which is great, and a lot of companies do warranty their optics and their lights. However, you're playing in the game, your optic gets shot out in the middle of the game. Unless you're living in the year 2077, you're not going to be shipping your optic and getting it back on time, and that really ruins your experience. So one important thing is always to consider having kind of these little levels of insurance for your light and your optic to make sure that you can stay in the game as long as you can. And if this gets shot out, it's like a $5 piece of plastic. It doesn't really matter versus your $200 optic, $60 optic, whatever, getting shot out. A lot less of a problem. So the next two attachments I would go over are something that I would consider of equivalent importance, and it really depends on if you have a secondary or how you like to set up your gun and how you like to hold your gun. Now, that is going to be the grip or hand stop and the sling. So I'm going to go over the grip or hand stop first because that's likely what most people are going to buy, and how to choose a grip or hand stop and how to mount it, of course. So there's a million different kinds of grips and hand stops and scales and whatever like that out there in the market, and it's really up to you to choose what's best. I kind of like stubbier grips, and most of us, the staff, kind of like stubbier grips because most people don't really hold their rifles with a hammer fist anymore. They kind of want to control the muzzle, so like I said before, you're gripping over your rifle. So this is actually a really cool new prototype grip from ZTW Works. So far I really like it, and I think it really affords for a good shooting experience. So how to set up your grip is really simple. Where do I put it? A lot of people ask. And some people do set up their grips, I would say, inefficiently, where they put their grip like right here, like this. And that doesn't really do anything for you. It doesn't really afford you any control over your rifle. Yeah, this is an airsoft gun. There's not much recoil, or any recoil at all. Even if it's a gas gun, there's not really that much recoil. But it's about controlling the muzzle so you can transition from targets quickly and you can get a stable shooting position. So if your grip's here, at that point you might as well grip the magwell. And I think magwell grip is fine in certain circumstances. However, what I like to do is I like to set up my grip where I hold my pistol, and I will demonstrate that really quickly. So this is my handgun over here. So I like to hold my pistol right about here, and I'll just hold my hand there, and then pick up my rifle, and bam, look at that. The grip's in that position where I hold my pistol. And that's a really, really easy way of where to set up your foregrip. Because wherever you hold your handgun, your natural point of aim and your natural stance is going to afford the best shooting experience for a handgun. So your support hand for your rifle should just be in that same position. Now, of course, you might need to move this back and forth depending on how long your rifle is and where you want your switches, but that's kind of just a general guideline of how I like to set up my grip. Now, the next thing I'll go over is going to be the sling. And there's, again, a myriad of different options of slings that you can run. This is a Ferro Concept Slingster. I love this sling. I just put it on my rifle over the break, and I think it's super awesome, super ergonomic, and it has a pad, and it's great. You can run a 1-point sling if you want. I don't recommend a 3-point sling. Pretty outdated unless you're running like some MP5 SAS loadout. Generally 2 or 1 point sling is what I would choose. And what is that? Of course, we're gonna have a more detailed video on slings, but 2-point slings essentially mean you have 2 points of contact for the sling on your rifle. So 1 point here and then 1 point on my stock. And the sling is really important because it keeps your rifle to your body. So if you need to do any work on any objectives, so in some games at Siege, we have to plant a bomb or you have to move a hostage or something like that, the sling helps you put your rifle away so you can do work with your hands. A 1-point sling is also a really great option. And the advantage that a 1-point sling provides over a 2-point is a 2-point is kind of stability and options when shooting because you can use the sling to brace against yourself and it kind of keeps the rifle from swinging as much. A 1-point sling is more of like speed and versatility when shooting. This is actually Max's sling, so I'm going to put it on his gun over here. And it simply attaches via a clip like this. You can lock it in place. And there you go, the sling is attached. For 1-point slings, one tip that you might not know is where do you want to run this? So obviously around the neck, and then what arm do you want to put through? The actual really good way to do it is actually to put the opposite hand, so I'm a righty, so I'm going to actually put my left arm through. And the reason for this is that having it this way makes it really easy to transition hands when I'm shooting. If you have it the other way, transitioning hands becomes a lot more difficult. So in terms of sling points, where I set up my sling and where I like to set up my sling, if you're running a 1-point, 100% set it up around here, this area, or like the back of the stock like this. Don't set up a 1-point so your whole gun is hanging down like this. That's a lot of mass, you're not really having much control over it. If you're running a 1-point, you kind of want your sling set up right here, which is why most guns have their sling points kind of as the base plate. This one has QDs here, Max has his here, and so on and so forth. The front sling point, this is a big topic of debate and people like to set it up where they like to set it up. Personally, I like to set it up right here, so right where kind of my rail and my receiver meet. That way, when I'm holding my gun and I'm slinged around my gun, I don't have stuff getting in the way of my hands and my manipulations over here. And when it's got tension on it, the mag well is pretty easy and clear to reload, and there's no issues with that. So mags, actually, going onto the mag well. Whoop. This over here is a mid-cap mag. I highly recommend getting a mid-cap mag. And my philosophy on mags is to treat them pretty much as disposable things. There's a lot of nice and great mags out there, but this is just simply a Maple Armory's mag, really good stuff. So the mag, a few things you want to consider. Does it feed? Does it fit? And yeah, that's really it. Does it feed? Does it fit? So, does it feed? You got to test that yourself. Does it fit? Yes, this fits. Some guns will have very loose mag wells. Mine is pretty tight, and that is because I added a little Velcro shim on the inside. If you do have an M4, because they're all built overseas and not exactly to the same spec, and of course these mags are also built overseas and not exactly the same spec, some mags will fit loose and some mags will fit tight. I generally recommend going a little bit on the looser side and just adding a little Velcro shim here. I have a piece of male Velcro over here that I stuck on the inside of my mag well, offside to where the mag catches, because if you put it on this side, you're kind of creating space for the mag to not catch. You want the mag to sit more into the mag catch. So when this goes in, it fits and can't really pull it out unless I depress the button and take it out. So the last thing we're gonna be talking about is battery choice. Now, if you're into RC or if you're into airsoft for long enough, millions of different kinds of batteries out there, millions of different kinds of connectors. What I like to recommend as a general guideline is the biggest battery that will fit in your gun in terms of capacity for AEGs, and switching your connector immediately to a Dean's connector or an XT60 connector. I recommend Dean's just because it's a little bit more widely available and it's really easy to find. They shouldn't cost too much from your local shop, or if you know how to solder, you can obviously do it yourself. The reason why we go for a Dean's connector is for two main reasons. First of all, it provides less resistance and it is better at handling higher currents than a Tamiya connector. Tamiya connectors are generally just little Molex connectors from the computer old school 90 days, and they wobble around. And onto my next point, durability. Dean's connectors have these two little solid plates in there. XT60s are kind of similar in that respect as well, and they just connect with other solid plates, like on my backup blower over here, like this. Boom, done, easy. I do recommend LiPos generally over NIMs or NiCads. They don't really have a memory effect that those batteries have, and they generally have a higher capacity for a smaller size. So this right here is a 1450 milliamp battery. You can get them in all sorts of sizes, ranging from like the tiny little HPA ones to these huge, massive machine gun chunky bricks. So there's different shaped LiPos for different guns. There's nunchuck, brick. I generally like bricks better because I don't have a big stock that can fit nunchucks. And I like bricks because they fit in more varieties of guns than nunchucks do. This goes in my buffer tube of my M4, and it also goes in the top cover of my AK with pretty much no issue. So, of course, this is the way I like to set up my gun. You guys probably have a little bit different philosophies and different bodies, of course, and different kinds of guns you like than me. So this way of setting up my gun has served me well for actually quite a number of years. Even though my guns change and my attachments change, the kind of way I like to set them up doesn't really change that much, and it's pretty much the same on most of the guns that I have behind me that the staff use. So no matter how you like to set up your gun, make sure you guys practice with it and play around with it. It's really cool to have 20 different guns, and I have a huge arsenal of guns, but what I kind of like to do is I only have a few, and I practice with them and make sure I get proficient with them, because on the field, nobody really cares what your gun looks like, they just care if you can shoot.